Okay, filtering is where we often start with kind of changing things in the different views. But what happens is after we filter to show the things we often want to go ahead and put some annotations in there to actually kind of call things out that aren't obvious by default. And let me show you what I mean. So this is the whole notion of visibility graphics and going through and turning things on and off or overriding the appearance. Okay, let's talk about annotations and some of the things that are available there. Like all the annotation tools show up under the Annotate tab. So in the ribbon, the Annotate tab will open up all these things. And the most common ones we use are dimensions to show the size of things. We can use detail lines to actually draw in things where you don't have them modeled. We just want to sort of put some line work in there that'll help explain something. We have, text and tags. Text being a piece of dumb text, it's a string, okay, that doesn't change dynamically. Tags are probably the most interesting thing on this list. Tags are actually pieces of text which show you values from the information model. So they show you database values that we're actually pulling out, and they'll always reflect the current value from the database. So let's just kind of go walking through those one at a time and kind of show you how they work. So here's the deal. I got this floor plan view. I got this great furniture plan. I got this plumbing plan. I'm going to go through and create another plan view. So I'm going to go back to first floor plan. Again, I'm going to duplicate. And this is where these two choices are going to have a difference. Duplicate versus duplicate with detailing. Duplicate will copy all the model objects to the new view, but it wouldn't copy any annotations. It wouldn't copy any dimensions. It wouldn't copy any text, any tags. Duplicate with detailing will actually copy those. It'll copy the annotations. So any dimensions will carry across, any tags will carry across. Anything that we've added is detail lines. But the important thing to understand about annotations is they only belong to a single view where the model objects belong to all the views. Okay, so I'm just going to start by duplicating because I don't have any details yet or annotations yet. Again, looks very similar. I'm going to go through and rename this. I'm going to call this my floor plan dimensioned. Okay, so let's think about this. For the dimension view, my target here is I want to give this to the carpenter. So after the concrete slab is poured, we can use these dimensions to actually frame up the walls and understand how to build this building. So I might start just by cleaning up a little bit. So we have all these objects like the furniture objects. The carpenter's not going to want to see those. So I can visibility graphics, just turn those off. Again, on the floors, they may not care about the floor pattern, so let me just turn those off. Just kind of cleaning it up a little bit. Okay, now we're ready to start adding dimensions, and let's talk about how you do that. Okay, as you look at the drawing, and we think about dimensions, there's the notion of really what do we dimension to? Do you dimension to the inside face, the outside face, the core face? Yeah. There's a lot of choices available, and the one that typically makes the most sense is to actually dimension to the core faces. And the reason you often dimension to the core faces is that's the point that the carpenter will typically lay down the wall with. They'll go through and put the face of the stud at a specific location, so it makes sense to give them information that's going to help them place that accurately. You could put the center line of the wall, but then they'd have to do a little bit of math to figure out where the edge of the stud is relative to that center line. You could tell them the faces of the wall, but then they'd have to subtract off the thickness of the exterior or the interior finishes. So faces tends to be a good thing. And what I'll even do is I'm going to switch this view. Currently you can see the walls, they have a pretty heavy thickness. I'm going to change to something called a thin line view, where it'll just shrink the edges of the wall down so I can sort of see accurately where those boundaries are a little bit better. Okay, how are we doing in terms of the screen catching up? Are you doing okay? Okay, excellent. So let's go to the Annotate tab. We'll talk about the Dimension tool and what's available. There's aligned dimensions. Aligned dimensions will always follow where the angle of the wall. So for example, in that little illustration there, you can see that if the walls are angled, the dimensions will sort of follow along parallel to the wall that you're dimensioning. Linear is a little bit different. That'll actually sort of always square out the dimensions, so they're always horizontal or vertical. We don't use that too often. Angular will sort of measure an angle, like in a sloped roof. Radial would be good for, or diameter will be for dimensioning a diameter. We might use that on that circle that Hong put into the toilet area. Arc lengths, a lot of different choices, but 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to do align dimensions. And let's talk about what a good dimension drawing looks like. So I'm going to choose the align tool. You have a choice here, even before we start drawing, about really what would you prefer the dimensions to stick to. So do you want them to be the wall center lines? Do you typically want to do it to the faces or the exterior surfaces? And I always tend to do faces of core. It just makes your life a little bit easier to pre-select this. You can always change it. But I usually go for the faces of the core. And here's what happens. When I want to draw a dimension, what I do is I hover over a wall, and it indicates different lines that I can use to pick as references. So I could pick the inside face of the core, the outside face, the center line. I gave it the outside face of the wall, but I'm going to just pick that face of the core. I'm going to zoom out a little. I'm just rolling the wheel on my mouse. So a good first dimension to put in there is really the overall width of the building. So what I'm going to do is just measure from one face to the other face. I'll zoom on out. The first 2 picks that I've done were really just picking references on the model. So I'm just picking those wall references. The third one I'm going to pick is actually going to place the dimensions. So if I'm not clicking on something in the model, if I'm just clicking in the drawing area, that'll go through and place the dimension there. So you see it's 31'4" and 3/4. So as a good starting point, I want you to try this on your own models if you have them open. See if you can sort of say faces of core. If I have faces of core, I don't even have to get in there very close. I can just click near the core and it'll hug up to it. It'll know what I'm trying to do. See if you can get a good overall dimension going in the other direction too. So at the highest level, I'd love to know this. Just how wide is the building? And the building's basically 31.5 by 17.5. Okay, and that's the highest level information. Just even knowing that's going to be useful. Okay, as you keep on going with your dimensioning, the next most useful dimension is to probably go through and put some dimensions that go from the outside faces to these interior walls that intersect, because we want to help the carpenter understand how to frame that wall. So what I'll do with that is I'll go from here to one of the faces of the interior wall, and I could go either one. You just have to be sort of consistent. It's about 6'4". I'm going to go from that same face here to the exterior. Put it there. So I have this string of dimensions, these interior dimensions showing where to frame up that interior wall. So this is pretty good in terms of actually giving some information. We could go ahead and place those individually, and that works just fine. The only disadvantage of placing them individually is if something moves, they don't actually move together. So what I'm going to encourage you to do, I'm going to delete these, I'm just backspacing to delete these out, is to, when you do have a string of dimensions, choose the Align tool, and instead of placing them individually, to actually place what's called a string of dimensions, where I'm going to come here, but then as opposed to placing it, continue and choose another thing, and that'll actually give me a string of dimensions. Now they're actually considered to be a single string that's all hooked together. So we can do that in the other direction too. I'll go from this face here to one of the faces, the interior, to the outer wall there. And this is getting pretty good. Notice as I put my dimensions in there, I like to put my dimensions on the outside of the building. It just gets a little less cluttered inside. Yeah, you want to put them just where people are going to find them very easily. So yeah, that's actually not too bad in terms of dimensioning it. You see, just with those dimensions, most people could figure out where to put all the essential walls. Okay, let me pause there for a second. I just got to get a sense of you, from your guys' perspective, how's dimensions feeling? Any questions, or should we pause for a second to give people a chance to try that? You think they're good? Excellent. Let me show you one other little variation on dimensions, is to actually think about, stringing dimensions together. Let me put some dimensions on these windows here. The third string of dimensions that I might put in there, that I often put in there, is something like this, where I just show the distance between the center lines of the windows. Again, that's just to help the carpenter figure out how to go through and place those. Now, a cool thing about strings of dimensions is this. Strings of dimensions actually have this notion of, when you choose them, there's this little equality relationship in there, and you can sort of see right now, we're not enforcing it. You know, when Hong put this together, he actually put them together equal. So let me, sort of move one of those windows over a little bit, just to make them unequal. The cool thing about the dimension string, though, is when you have a string and the equality is not turned on, you can turn it on, and that'll enforce the equality. So that's actually a really good way of just making sure that things stay evenly spaced. So for example, if this window moves out, I'm not sure if you can see, it's actually moving all the windows because it's keeping them evenly spaced. So that's just an example of how you can use dimensions to sort of enforce a constraint. Okay, so dimensions, like this 20-foot, 2-foot 10 over here, I'm just going to push that up a little. See, it's out of the way. Yeah, most framers will tell you 22-foot 10 is kind of an odd dimension. So you might want to make that, 22-foot, 11 or 23 feet. You might make it an even increment. Yeah, and if we want to change a dimension, the thing to do is always remember that the dimension, okay, it's bidirectional. You can control the location of objects as well as report the location of objects. And if you want to change the location of an object, you don't click on the dimension. You'd sort of think that you'd click on the dimension, but you don't. What you actually have to do is click on the object, because when you click on the object, that's saying this is the object that I want to be able to move. That's the object that I'm going to adjust the position of. So if I want that to be 23, when I click on the object, make it blue, you'll see the dimensions that refer to it also turn blue, and I can change those. And move it over there. So dimensions, they are bidirectional. They'll both report as well as drive behavior. But the key to keep in mind is that as you're dimensioning, you don't click the dimension to change the value. You click the object and move it using the dimension. Okay, let's just pause there for a second. That's always kind of a little confusing one at first. Okay, how's that feeling? In the same sense over here, I could move that wall. It's currently 6'4" and 1/8. If I don't want it to be that, I could just make it 6'4". It'll move it a little bit. Okay. The last thing I want to show you about dimensions that you need to know is just how you change an existing dimension. Because that's actually, it's a good question. So for example, I have this dimension over here. I might want to have a dimension from the center line of that last window to the wall over here. And what I can do if I want to do that is I actually choose, this is where you do choose the dimension. You can choose it, right-click it, and say you're going to edit the witness lines. And that'll actually give me the option of adding some more of these witness lines to it. Oops, let me do that again. I didn't close it right. I'm going to edit the witness line, put a new witness line there. I just have to click somewhere out in the drawing area again. Okay. And now we have that dimension too. So you can change existing dimension lines. You can move things with dimension lines, add them in there. But really for the level of what we're going to do, these kind of dimensions are probably about as deep as we're going to get. You don't need to dimension, like the distance between this piece of furniture and that piece of furniture, the distance between this chair and that countertop over there. You don't need to dimension everything. That's just furniture. It's going to float in the space. People adapt it as needed. But you think about really the things that are going to be determined by when the project is built and try to dimension those. There's also, just so you know about it, a very handy tool. There's a little tape measure tool available to us. I have it up in the quick access area toolbar. I think it's also under the modify tab. There it is, little tape measure. That's really useful for if you just want to get a quick sense of how far something is, but you don't actually want to put a dimension in. You can just string it out. Just kind of get a quick measure. So, oh, that's about 4 feet. That'll be enough for people to slip through there. Okay, but that's not permanent. That's just kind of for you as you're working. Okay, so dimensions, I tend to put on floor plan views. Okay, maybe not on all the floor plan views. I tend not to actually put dimensions on elevations, because if you go to the elevations, you actually see a lot of the essential information about the height. The first floor on the roof, it's already there. And I actually would rather just kind of keep people looking at the floor plan for finding the dimensions. Now the difference between, now that we have some annotations on here, copying or duplicating and duplicating with detailing is going to play into it here. If I would say duplicate this view, you'll see I'll get the model objects, but it's not going to copy the dimensions. Or if I say duplicate with detailing, it'll duplicate it, but copy the dimensions. Okay, so that's really the difference between those two things. Detailing means copy the annotations too. Okay, so let me pause there for a second. You know, that's dimensions. That's really the highlight about what's going on. The big things are, as you place dimensions, you're going to pick some reference lines. Just put them in the drawing area to place them. You can edit the dimensions by moving the witness lines or locking them to set an equality constraint. That's kind of it for the starting point of dimensions. I think dimensions are probably better if you just practice them. Okay, so let me pause for just a second and ask you guys a question, because I know I've run a little long here relative to when we usually take a break. But since we lost time with all the technical hassles, let me check in with you. You know, I could take a break here for like 5 minutes if people need a bio break or something like that, or I could just kind of keep on going. You know, I'd love to still finish up around the normal class time, so I want to give you as much stuff to help you along as possible. So what would you prefer? Would you prefer to take a break or just to kind of keep on going? Okay, very good. That sounded like a pretty good consensus. Let's keep going. Okay, the next topic then is going to be just adding text annotations. And let me just kind of show you that. That's going to be a real quickie. That's going to be a real quickie. So for example, oh, we have this floor plan here. In fact, I have Raj's, or not Raj's, this is actually Hong's furniture plan right here. Sometimes you like to add text to this just to explain things. For example, a really cool thing that Hong found, which is kind of nice, he found this out on Revit City. He found this nice whiteboard object. Pretty good. You know, and you can find objects and like bring them in. That's actually kind of a nice one. The problem with the whiteboard, it looks great in 3D, but you know, if you go to the floor plan view, you might not be able to tell it's a whiteboard. It's really just kind of right over there. So whether it's a whiteboard or a flat panel screen or whatever it is, you know, I might not be able to tell just by looking at it in this view. So there are times when you want to put just a little bit of text in, and don't be afraid of text. Text is actually a good thing. A lot of times a few words really will save you an hour of modeling. So don't be ashamed to use text to explain things. I can use the Annotate tool, use the text under the Annotate tab. I can decide whether I want just a string of text that has no sorts of arrows, or leaders as we call them, or put a leader on that. I usually put a 2-segment leader. Let me just pull on down. I'm just going to call that whiteboard. So use text when you need to. You know, this thing over here, if you can't tell that's a lab bench, maybe I'll just go ahead and put a piece of text on it right here. Whatever it is, because the important thing is really you just have to communicate to someone who's going to be looking at your drawing what those things are. So think about they're going to need to understand your drawing. You understand it because you spent so much time, you know, modeling that through the night and very carefully loving it. They may not understand just by looking at it. So give them clues to help them understand, because if we don't communicate our design intent, then we haven't really finished. The beautiful design has to be communicated to other people. So don't be afraid to use text to go ahead and do those things. Okay. Now text, just so you know, it has types like everything else in here has types. If you choose it, you'll see, oh, I can choose some different types. There's this 3/32 type. There's 1/8 type. What these types are, those ones that have numbers are, those are actually referring to just the size that it'll print out. So when it says it's the 1/8, that means that when it prints out, on a sheet of paper, it's going to be 1/8 of an inch tall. So you can kind of refer to your text that way. I actually tend to create my own little types where I'll create ones like room label or floor plan notes, and I'll use those instead, because the nice thing is I can change them. I did this incorrectly. I actually used the room label type. Let me make that the floor plan note type. And I'll make that the floor plan note. You'll see it's a little smaller. But the nice thing is I can edit this now, and then all the floor plan notes will change. So as opposed to being Arial, I'm going to make them, Comic Sans, which is actually an awful font. Maybe leave it the same size or make it a little bit bigger, but I'll say OK. And what will happen is all the different notes that are the same type will pick that up. So text, there's really not too big a story in terms of it. It's pretty much you just add text in there. You might actually want to put text in there. Oh, for example, if this is the workroom, that might be a good text label. That's what I created the room label type for. This is just the workroom. Okay, so let's pause there for a second. Is text feeling okay? Looking good? Okay, excellent. So text is a great first starting point. And in terms of, the annotations, it's pretty much select the tool. You can set the type style, decide whether or not you want to have a leader. You can copy and paste those around. Text is pretty easy. And you can change the properties to create new types if you want to. Different colors, opacities, font sizes, things like that. Okay. Tags are a whole nother story. Let's talk about tags, because you're going to find out tags is one of my favorite subjects. Tags is a great way of actually pulling information out of the database so you can actually see it and use it, and the text that it's showing up in the tags is dynamic. It'll change based upon the values. Let me show you what I mean. So, for example, here we are over in Hong's, I'm going to do it on the dimension floor plan view. Here's the deal. I got these doors, I got these windows. They're kind of hanging out. They're not looking too bad. But just looking at the floor plan view, it's hard to tell what they are. So I could go ahead and put a piece of text in here that says, oh, great. This is a 32-inch exterior door. Change its style. Okay, and I can notate them all that way. But that's kind of, it's not the smartest way to do it, in that if something changes about that door, for example, I changed that door from a 32-inch door, it's actually a 36-inch door, I was already wrong. If it was change it to a 30-inch door, the label's not going to change. The text is going to stay static, so it's not smart. So a better way to do this is actually use a tag, and let me show you what I mean. When you were going through, or if you weren't even paying attention to it, there's this thing called the door schedule that's being created. And you'll see there's these different doors, door 66, 74, 82. Actually, that's funny. I went through and I messed this up in a funny way. I'm going to put it back this way. As I was getting ready, I messed up his poor schedule. Hong didn't do this. Okay, there's different doors. There's doors 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I know the door 1 is a 36 by 84-inch door. Actually, all his doors are about the same size. They're big doors. Okay. If I would like to be able to sort of relate the information in this schedule, because in the schedule, I know this is going to be a Simpson door. And I'm going to make it, oh, kind of a 4-panel white door, whatever it is. Okay, I'm putting information into the database about what I want that door to be. Okay. But if I'd like to reference the plan back to the schedule, what I'd really like to do is be able to tag this door and let you know that it is one of those doors. So here's door schedule, there's door number 1. Okay, that's going to be this one. Well, we'll change them around and show you how it all works. So here's the door. Let's go ahead and tag it. And how that works is under the Annotate tab, you find the tag tool. And let me find it in here. I'm modifying the door right now because I have it selected. Let me annotate. Tagging is right here. So you can either tag individual objects, and a lot of people do that. You'll just go ahead and choose Tag by Category, and I'll tag that door. Looks like it's door number 4. This is door number 1. This is door number 2. This is door number 3. So all I'm really doing is dropping tags on top of the doors. Okay, and it's reporting some value. And it turns out you can control what value that is. Whether you want to see the ID of the door, whether you want to see a textual description of the door, or whatever it is. Let me go ahead and close everything that's not shown. And I'll bring open that door schedule. And I'm going to go through and just tile those so I can see them both. View, view, view. Tile right there. Okay, so here's door number 4 over here. This door number 4 refers to that door number 4 in the schedule. So if it turns out, oh, the exterior doors I'm going to leave 36. How about these interior doors, the bathroom door, for example? I might not need a 36-inch door. If I want to change that to a 32-inch door, which is probably sufficient. Okay. Notice door number 1 over here, I changed it. It's also changed over here in the schedule, so it's 32 by 84. Maybe the same thing for door number 2 here. Okay, so tagging is just a nice way of relating things together. I have that schedule which shows all the information about the doors. I don't want to repeat all that information. I just really like to refer you to the schedule. So tagging lets me do that. Okay, let's pause there for just a second. So tagging and this whole notion of pulling some value that you want to see about a door or a window into the floor plan view. Let's see how that's setting with people.
Sometimes when you run a tag, asks you to load a tag.
It asks you to load a tag, or what's it asking? Sure, no tag loaded for that type.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. So let's talk about that. It turns out almost any object can be tagged. And some tags are loaded in, some tags aren't loaded in, and we might have to load some new ones. So we can even see that if we go under Families, and there's different types of tags. There's a room tag, there's a material tag, a lighting fixture tag, there's even a wall tag. But we might have something, oh, for example, like there's no furniture tag there right now. So if I go tagging, or there's no casework tag, something like that. So if I went back and went to, say, the furniture plan, and I wanted to tag that furniture, I could say, oh, annotate, and tag. And when I click on that, it'll say, hey, there's no tag loaded for furniture. What do you want to do? So I'll say, sure, let's go ahead and load one in. What you need to do is just go to the annotations in the library, and you'll find a furniture tag in there somewhere. Is it under? No, it looks like it's not at the highest level. It's probably buried under the architectural items. And there's a furniture tag. So with that, now I can tag that. This is desk number, well, looks like whatever it is. It's not really advertised just yet. It's probably the description. Let me kind of fill that tag in. I'm going to call this desk A. See if that makes any sense. Tags actually are used to fill in values in there too. So looks like that is desk A type 2. So if I go here, let me see what I'm actually filling in. Under the types, it looks like that is just the type mark. So it's an identifier to say there's desk A versus desk B, different types that we could be ordering. Okay, so The high level out of all that is that if you sort of get the message that there isn't a tag for what you're trying to tag, you just need to load in a new one. Okay? So windows and doors, they're already in there. I think I already put them in the starting point file. Some pieces might not be, but you just have to add that in. And later we're going to talk about how we customize the tags so we can choose what information is shown in the tags. But for right now, just these identifiers to link it to the schedule is probably a good starting point. Let me tag those windows too. So I can tag by category. I'll get this window. That looks like it's window D. That's window D. That's window D. Actually, just to show what these all are, let me open the window schedule. So where's the schedules? There's this window schedule. And again, I'll WT. I can't tile very well today. So there's type D. It's a 3x5 window, 9 feet off the, or the head's at 9 feet. If I tag some more windows, for example, this guy up here, actually, I'm in the middle of modifying something. Stop that. Oh, I'm actually changing the label of that. That's not what I wanted to do. I was in the wrong cell. Okay, so I'll go back to annotate. Oh, come on, you. I'm not doing that anymore. Let's see if I can get this to cooperate. Nope. It still thinks I'm in the middle of something. Let me try closing that. Try it again. I'm trying to escape. I'm not sure why. I'm sort of stuck in this mode right now, and I don't want to be in this mode right now. So I'm trying to escape to get out of it. Okay. That's better. Just switching over to the floor plan view did. So here's the window schedule again. Let me tile this around. That wasn't such a good choice. So I'll zoom on in. So I can tag these windows too. Now, as you're tagging, you might realize that, oh, tagging can be a pretty repetitive process. So you can tag things one item at a time, or if you want to sort of speed things up a little bit, you can actually use the other option that shows up under the Annotate tab, which is Tag All. And what does Tag All does? It lets you just really select all the different objects in that view and tag all of them of a certain category. Let me show you what I mean. So Tag All gives you the choice of all the objects in the view or only the selected objects, because you might only want to tag the ones that you currently selected. I'll say all though. I can choose door tags. I can even choose window tags. I'm going to control click and get them both. And what happens is when I say apply, it'll actually put tags on the windows that I hadn't had already. Let me undo that and show that to you again. We'll undo that. So again, it's tag all, and you can choose a category of what you want to tag. I'll put a little leader on them so they match the other ones, that little line that kind of separates them. Say apply, and it puts them in there. So that's a really quick way of tagging. And where I'll recommend you use that, if you go through and you tag your floor plan view, okay, you're looking good. I sort of know what the 1, 2, 3, 4 doors are. I know what the A, B, C, D windows are. I'm looking pretty good. When you get to the elevations, for example, let me open up Hong's elevation, like his south elevation. That one's already tagged. Let me go to the north elevation. That one I haven't tagged yet. Okay, here's those windows. In the same sense, I'd like to know what those doors and windows refer to in the schedule. What I can say is tag by or tag all, and I'll choose the doors and the windows. And say apply, and it'll really quickly put all the different tags on for me. So that just saves you lots of time. His east doesn't have any windows or doors. His west, Not there either. Okay, so we have all the doors and windows tagged. Okay, and why are we tagging them? Ultimately, what we're trying to do is we would like to sort of always have reference back to the schedule. But here's where it can actually come in useful. So this is a window type B. This is a window type A right now. So what we can do is actually, if I change this to, oh, it's probably his 36 by 60, I'm guessing. There. Now it's a type B window. So the cool thing is, by tagging, as opposed to putting the text in there, you'll always have a reference to the current selection. You'll know what it is. And you never have to worry about your text getting out of date. So tagging is really a lot more powerful than just going through and putting the text in there. Okay, so let's pause there for a second on the whole notion of tagging, and let's see if anyone has any questions about putting tags on. For your initial plans, I like to tag doors and windows, just because then we have a reference back to the door and window schedule. Okay, but you can tag other things as we get into more detail, but doors and windows are a pretty good starting point. Okay, so any questions? No question. You guys are too shy. Don't be so shy. Ask, because it's really, it's no harm in getting these questions answered for you. Okay. One other type of tag I want to let you know about that's actually a really useful one that you might use is something called the room tag. And here's how the room tag works. Okay. Turns out Hong actually went through and created rooms in this building. And how you create a room, just so you don't remember, if you don't remember from prior, what happens is I'll take his room out and show you how we create a new one. On the architecture tab, there's this notion of a room, and the room is really defined as kind of a continuous boundary of walls. It'll sort of find what it considers to be a room based on a boundary that's continuous. So I'll say, great, I'm going to make that a room. Now, when it placed this room, you'll notice it actually put a tag in there. So there is room 4. It's even showing me how many square feet it is. So it's pretty good. And I can choose different types for the tag. I can say don't show the area, or I can show the area. But the nice thing about showing the area is actually you get some really quick feedback. You don't have to look it up in the schedule. So I might put these rooms have already been defined. For these, I'm just going to tag the room. So I'm going to tag this one and tag that one. So tags are also useful, just in your floor plan views for showing, the specific room name, what the room number is, what the area is. This one I'm going to change its name, call it workroom. So again, why do I like the tags better than just putting the text in there? If later on I decide to change the name of that from workroom to, design area or research area, I just change it one place. It'll change in the schedule, it'll change in the floor plan, it'll change everywhere that tag appears. Again, the tag's dynamic, so in that same sense, if I go through and move this wall around, notice as I move the wall, the square footage of that room is changing. 372, 368, 363. So tags are a very powerful way of doing it, and that ultimately leads to really just a better job with your schedules. Okay, let me take one out. That's the one that I had left alone before, or I took out and deleted. So we have a couple different schedules here. Okay, so relative to where we want to be, okay, this whole notion of tagging, so what is this? Show me a value from the database, and we'll learn how to customize it, is a great way to get started. Okay, we'll learn how to change the information displayed by the tag, and I can show you some tutorials where you can get that, but you won't need to do that just yet. Okay. Now we're down to this whole notion of it's really changing the view properties and really how the view is displayed. But before I go there, let me kind of revisit that issue of the schedules, because I know we covered it together, but let me just kind of give it a real quickie here, just for anyone who might have missed that, because I know a lot of people have asked about that just relative to the assignment. So these schedules that I keep on popping up, like the door and window schedule, they show all sorts of information about the project. They may not show all the information you want about the project. So for example, on this assignment, I suggest that, hey, it'd be nice to go ahead and figure out what the window area is, for example. And how you can do that, so here we're in the schedule, and the schedule has its own properties, including the fields you want to show. Oh, you'll notice that by default, it's not showing a count of the windows, so I can put a count in there. That'll actually show me just how many windows of each type. It looks like it has 5 of these, 5 of those, and 3 of those. But if I want to add another field, for example, a window area, and I think I showed you guys this last time, what I can do is calculate a value. I'll just call it the window area. Okay. You have to say what it is. It's a formula, and it's going to be an area because a length, a linear dimension by a linear dimension will give you an area. And now we can actually type in some sort of formula. I'll say width times height. And it'll go through and calculate some sort of area. Okay, so this whole notion of just computing values to add additional things to the schedule is a great way to get started. The other thing about schedules that you may want to know, and it's useful for either the window schedule for figuring out the total amount of area, or even in the room schedule for figuring out the total amount of room area, is the notion of how you put a subtotal or a total, a grand total on this thing. So how you do that is, okay, we got the lines, the individual lines. The notion of putting a title on really has two parts. There's one part where we need to sort of say that we want to put a title in, and the second part is we have to choose which field it is that needs to be totaled up. And here's how you do that. Under the window, or the schedule, when I have it open, I can choose some different properties of it, including the sorting and grouping. Sorting and grouping is where we get the idea of putting the total on. Put a grand total, or we can even subtotal it if we want to subgroup. But I'll put grand totals in there. Okay. I can also say itemize every instance. Let me show you what that is. So there really are a lot of B windows and C windows, but they were all grouped together. So it only looked like there were one. Notice when I ungroup it, the count is 1, as opposed to when I group them. Okay, now it's a count of 5, a count of 3. So first we say we're going to add a total to that, and you say, hey, I put a total in there, but it's not showing up. What's wrong? Something's not working. Okay, and here's the last thing you need to do to make it work, is that we know you want totals, but you have to tell us which column you do want totaled, and that happens under the Formatting tab. So I can choose, let me total up that window area, say calculate a total on that, and then it will go through and calculate the total. Okay, so let me pause there on schedules just for a minute, because again, that's one of those confusing ones, but it's a very useful skill, this whole notion of putting a total or a subtotal at the bottom of schedule. So if you want to try that on your model, go ahead. Let's just kind of see if we can kind of get our head around that one. Okay, so Raj, how are things looking in the room? Very good. Okay, let me show just the one other kind of total that a lot of people are putting in there. It's just on the room schedule. Some people are creating their own room schedule. Some people are doing it right on the room finish schedule. Doesn't really matter. You could show the area field, so I can say show a field and include the area. That's pretty good. If you'd like to total up that area, I can say sorting and grouping again. I have to tell it, put a total on. And then under the appearance, I need to just sort of, oops, not the appearance there, the formatting, excuse me. Choose the area field as one to calculate a total for. Okay, so it's 489 square feet. Not bad. Now, some people ask about these fields over here. You see that floor, wall, ceiling. Yeah, we want to sort of specify what the finishes are. It'd be great if somehow the model were smart enough to pick that up directly from your model, or the Revit was smart enough to pick it up directly from your model, but it doesn't by default. It's just not quite smart enough. So these are really just text fields. You can just type whatever it is that you think is going to be the appropriate finish. So, in the bathroom, I might have tile walls. in the storage room, that might just be gypsum board. Maybe it's painted in the workroom. Those are just text values. So in terms of filling that out, just put text in there that sort of feels right. Okay, so let us go back for just a second and review where we are. In my little plan for success here, I'm rolling back a little bit right now. We start with just setting the camera to where we want it, then we filter using visibility graphics to kind of show the things we want. We add the annotations to it to kind of explain a little bit further, and where we finish up is really just adjusting the crop, the scale, any visual style effects we want, maybe turning on shadows to really create the effect, to really deliver it, to fine-tune that image the way you want it. And let me show you what I mean by that. Oops, went too far. There it is.
Is there a way to scale the entire schedule?
To do what to the entire schedule?
To scale it to a different size?
That all happens under the Appearance tab, where we can control just the size of the text. Okay, so in terms of scaling, let me comment on this. In general, I would probably leave the schedule small. In fact, I would leave most of my views the size they already are, quarter scale, something like that. Let me talk about what's going on. You look at that big sheet of paper. Let me show you what I mean. Cancel this. You're looking at a sheet of paper. You're going to drag a plan in there. Actually, this is looking very large because it's not scaled right. It's not cropped right now. Let me undo this. I'm going to just take it back out by delete. I'm going to just backspace to delete it. I'm going to crop that down, but we'll talk about paper. Oops, I'm doing the wrong thing. I got the title bar in addition to the paper. Or hang on there. What you got to understand is that's a 24 by 36 inch piece of paper. So if I come over here to this dimension floor plan, and I want to crop it down, I actually sort of just want to highlight the part of the building that I'm interested in, or the part of the model that I'm interested in. Okay, that's the only part I really care about right now. I'm going to drag that view in here. And I'm also going to go ahead and drag that door schedule in. I like to put them in next to the floor plan views so that when I'm looking at the floor plan, I can actually read the values in the schedule. Okay, and you're looking at that and you're saying, oh, that's so small. Look at that. Like 3/4 of the page has nothing on it. Okay, now your first inclination is to go ahead and want to scale all those things up because you think that you're making, it's like we're making posters. You realize 24 by 36 is actually a pretty large piece of paper. The inclinations to want to do that, I'm actually going to encourage you not to do that because your job isn't to fill up the paper. What's actually going to happen is, as we add more and more detail, you're going to learn that you get a lot more things on a single sheet of paper. So for the assignment and really as we move through, think about a scale that's sort of appropriate for just really, how things are done in industry. And it turns out quarter scale is actually a pretty good scale for most residential buildings. Even if I printed out this schedule here on normal size paper, that's probably 8.5 by 11 right there. So don't worry about blowing it up so that it looks like it fills the entire paper, because you're not making wallpaper. You're not making a poster to hang on my wall. Just kind of allow it to be small and, just kind of let it be, because that's actually kind of a pretty appropriate size. But that said, let me answer your question, which is, if I do want to change the schedule, I can always resize the columns by doing a little dragging. But if you really want to sort of scale it up, that's probably window, schedule. I'll change the appearance, and let me change the body text from 1/8 up to 1/4. And you'll see what happens then is it gets much bigger. So that's actually the answer to your question. After I spent all that time trying to discourage you from doing it, that's actually how you do it. I guess that's not too awfully bad. But again, don't worry about filling up the paper. It's really more about, I guess that's not too bad. I'll leave it at that. Okay, so Raj, is that a good answer for what you're after? Excellent. Okay, the last thing I want to show you guys is really what I mean by kind of improving the appearance of things. So I have that like furniture plan. Again, if I just really want to crop it, I don't really need to see the site boundaries. I can bring that in. That's my first thing. It's really always just choosing the crop and even choosing the scale. And usually quarter scale is pretty good. I zoom that to fit so this looks a little bigger for you guys. Now, once you've chosen that, there's a couple of visual style things that you may want to turn on or turn off. For example, we can go ahead and, this is probably a hidden line view. Actually, it's hidden line right now. There's no coloration to it. We can shade it. That puts a little bit of coloration in there. You could go ahead and actually change to the realistic style, which then goes and uses any sort of material information and kind of renders it that way. You could also, for example, turn on shadows. And that might give you sort of a good sort of sense of depth about the walls. So, those are kind of good. There's a lot of different things you can do. And really, you just have to decide for each of your different views. This might be good from an architectural standpoint. I probably wouldn't do that to my dimension view. My dimension view, I'm going to keep pretty clean and pure so that it really is all about the dimensions, not about the artistic effect. Or maybe my furniture plan, I want it to have a more artistic effect. So, yeah, I'll turn on realistic and give it a color. Okay. Same thing actually works for your elevation views. Let me show you those. So on the elevation views, let's go to that north elevation, for example. Zoom to fit this. Okay, Hong's already done a pretty good job of just cropping it. That looks pretty good. Let's do this. He looks like he has a shaded view right now. Again, we can make it hidden line to take out the color or shade it. If I'd like to show the shadows, that's again one of the tools at the bottom. Shadows are off right now. Let's turn them on. Now, the shadows aren't very dramatic here because he doesn't have much of an overhang. You could also, if you, for example, make that realistic. Another visual style I want to kind of draw some people's attention to is, if you're thinking about these as architectural drawings, some people like to put in a background or really kind of dress up the lines a little bit. And let me show you how you do that. In addition to all these visual styles, there's actually something called graphic display options. And it works like this. It lets you go through and even enhance it a little further. For example, you can add a background to it, where currently it's just nothing. It's a white background. A really quick way to kind of dress up your drawings is to put a little gradient background in there. And that just kind of gives you just a little something there. Let me try putting a sky in there. Kind of a very dark sky. I could actually put a photo in there if you want to, too, if you have a real background. But I'll put a gradient back in there. The other thing I like to show for the architects in the crowd is the whole notion of silhouetting. So there's this notion when we drew sections as well as elevations where there's a big gap between what's in the foreground and the background that we might want to put heavy lines around the outside. So if you took 31Q or one of the drawing classes, you might look for something like that. So this drawing it's really relatively flat right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the thin line view so we'll be able to see this. And I'll go back in there to graphic display options. I could go ahead and put in a silhouette line. So I'm going to put a really heavy line in there that I defined called silhouette. The effect is to do like that. So let me show you. None is, okay, you can't really see much of a distinction between the edge of the building and what's behind it. Silhouette just puts a heavier line in there. Okay, so people who do a lot of architectural drafting tend to like that. It looks just a little more, what is it? Pleasing to the eye. Okay, so that's the starting point in terms of what we want to do there. So again, what we're trying to do is really within these, get you used to the idea that you can adjust, you can filter, add the annotations, and ultimately enhance the appearance. Because really what I want you to be thinking about is, how you use all these different views to go through and tell your story. And again, you don't need a million views to tell your story, but really you're going to, in the same way you would write a good textual story or put together a good film, somehow we're going to use the information on these sheets to communicate that same sort of story, and the way you lay them out and the visual style, that can all be very, very important to helping people understand really what you're after. So in like the last 2 minutes, let me give you just one last little thing to go on. Oh, there was this notion of, like, there's the default 3D view. I've seen a lot of people trying to use 3D views on their drawings, and that's good. The default 3D view tends to look like this. Let me turn off this thing called the section box right now. Here's what you got to know about the 3D view. The default 3D view is great. You can go ahead and drag that onto your drawing. The problem is, if you keep working with it, okay, it may change. Okay, so if you want to go through and lock in a camera position so that you can use it and put it on your drawings and not have it change accidentally, what you're going to do, it's similar to what we've been doing with the floor plans. You're going to take that and duplicate it. It says copy of 3D now, and now I can say, okay, great. I'll rename that. That's the exterior northwest corner. Okay. The reason I did that and why I like that is I'm back over here in the main 3D view. If I rotate that around, because I'm working on the building, this view is going to stay locked to that camera position. Okay, so that's useful to you because now I can put that on my sheets. I don't have to worry about it accidentally slip sliding around. So think about 3D views. 3D views can be cropped the same way. A very useful variation on 3D views that some people like to play with is you'll take the default 3D view, and one thing you can do is very quickly create a section out of it, or a 3D floor plan. And I'll show this to you just real quickly so you sort of have it in your arsenal of tricks. But again, you don't have to do it for the first assignment. This is really just to kind of get you ready for where we're going. You can take a 3D view and by right-clicking on this view cube, orient the view. So, if I orient to a floor plan view, like the first floor plan, it rotates it, but if I rotate it back up again, it's the quickest way to create what I'll call a scalped view, where it's taking your floor plan and the information that's shown there, and typically in 2D, and extruding it up into 3D. So that's not too bad. I might want to save that one and use that. So I'm going to call that my 3D floor plan. Okay. In a similar way, Hung did a nice job of defining several sections through the building. So I could go through and take that 3D view. Again, the default 3D view, right-click on it, and I'll say, let's orient it to a section view. So, let's do one of his sections. So again, I can rotate that out. And I don't really like that section so much. Let me do the section 1 instead. Okay, so that's just a quickie way of creating 3D sections. And a lot of people like these kinds of views because it makes it really easy to see what's going on with that clear story. That's pretty good for understanding what he has in mind. Okay, so again, all these views, they can be placed on drawings. Last type of view a lot of people have been playing with, just so you know about, is, in 3D, there's the camera view. That just gives us a perspective. Place the camera. And there's that 3D view. Again, all the things about graphic styles, I can give that, a realistic coloration, maybe give it a background. That's not too bad looking. Or even for these, and this is the last one, I promise this is the last one. We'll take a 3D view, put a camera inside the building. Some people have been playing around doing this. And again, none of this is expected for the first assignment, but I sort of want to give you a clue of where we're going. That's inside the building. I'll warn you, inside the building, it's hard to get a good shot because it's even hard with a camera to get a good interior shot of a building if the room's not very big. I just expanded it out a little bit, make it realistic. But I hope you're seeing that once I go through and create the model, it's really easy to create as many views as I want to and kind of adjust them really quickly. So that for any of these views, if I choose to use them to help tell my story, it's got all those sections in there. Let me add a new sheet for that. Okay. I can just drag any of those in, again, to help tell the story. Kind of include them too. Okay, now I'll stop. So I'm sorry I ran a little bit over there, but I wanted to give you all that information. So I'll just shut up and answer any questions people have, but let's see how you guys are doing on your side.
I was going to ask about the assignment. I want to do next week.
Say one more time about next week.
Do we have an assignment for next week?
Actually, we don't. What's going to happen is because of like so many people being out and doing the special roads workshop on Thursday, we won't have an assignment that's due next Thursday or next Tuesday even. What we're going to do is we'll pass out a new assignment. We'll actually hand it out and send it out on Thursday so you can kind of get a look at it. But really, it won't be available or due till the following Tuesday. So not 4 days from or 5 days from then. You'll have a whole week and a half to work on it. Okay, so you have a reprieve for this weekend from spending time in the computer lab, at least for this class anyway. Actually, I didn't. If you come up a little bit closer to where the microphone is, because it was sort of dropped in and out a little bit. So just come on up, and for everyone else, please feel free to leave as you need to. We'll just try and answer a few specific questions.
I'm going to ask when you drag in
Yep.
The camera.
When you drag the view in, okay, then something about a camera box. Ask me.
Yeah, like if you open up, like if you open up a floor plan view.
So let me open up like first floor or something.
And those the floor.
Oh, these guys.
Yeah, the elevator.
Yep. Actually, what you're calling camera boxes, that's actually an apt description. It's just elevation cameras. Okay, so they're around the boundaries. Okay. It's doing what to them? I'm sorry. Sure. Ah, yes, it will pull them in by default unless you crop them out. So in this view, which is not cropped, or if it is, it's sort of a very big boundary. Let me see if I can see where the crop is. Now, this doesn't have a crop on it just yet. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put a crop on and say show it. Okay, so that's the crop boundary. So if I don't want those to show, I'll pull in. Hang on, I have the crop turned off right now, but okay, and now they won't. So if that property boundary is sticking out too far, or those elevation markers, or camera boxes as you call them, are hanging out, go ahead and just crop those out so you're really just getting the part of the view that you want to see on the sheet. Cool. That's it? Fantastic. I want to thank whoever's still hanging out in the room for your patience and putting up with all the hassles of the technology and stuff like that. I really, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your willingness to kind of follow along this way, but hopefully that delivered most of the, well, actually did deliver most of the same information as the morning class. So yeah, with your patience, we got it done. So thank you.